Former U.S. Ambassador to NATO Kurt Volker, who also served as the U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine negotiations from 2017 to 2019. Thanks so much for joining us again. We saw President Biden and U.S. allies roll out more aggressive sanctions on Russia today. We know sanctions were not a deterrent to Putin taking military action. So will these be any more effective in getting him to stand down, do you feel? And should more have been done sooner?
So thank you. First off, no, I don't think this will affect Putin's decision making. He is now on a military logic. He is attacking Ukraine. He did airstrikes and missile strikes overnight, tried to land some paratroopers today, sent tanks in. He's probing the Ukrainian defenses. We're going to see this again tonight, and we're going to see a lot more Russian military aggression. And sanctions are not going to have anything to do with that. Sanctions will take time, and they may make an impact on Russia's economy and on support for Putin over the long term, which is good. But that is the reason why we should have done this a few months ago.
And you just said, President Biden also said today that sanctions will take time to have an impact. How concerned are you that Russia will reach its military objectives and potentially take out the Ukrainian government well before they feel any of these sanctions, the pressure from these sanctions from the international community?
Right. I think that is the most likely scenario. I think Russia has a few days in which it may achieve its military objectives. And if they don't, it will be because of the Ukrainian forces fighting back. They have better equipment, better training, great morale, and they know their country, and they are determined to defend their country. So if they are able to hold off the Russian forces, it'll be solely because of the Ukrainians doing it, not because of these sanctions.
And President Biden is slated to participate in a NATO conference tomorrow, with Russia having now invaded. What's the role of NATO going forward, and is there any substantive role for the UN?
Well, as Martha just said, the most important role for NATO, which it is doing well, is defending its own members. That is the essence of NATO, that if you're a member, all the other member states come to your defense if you're attacked. That has to be credible and real, and people have to understand that. So I think that much is good. But what NATO is not doing is finding ways that it will directly and materially support Ukraine in its self-defense against Russian attacks. And that is an area that I hope that President Biden discusses with the allies tomorrow, gets the most out of them that he can. There are a number of allies who are reticent about supporting Ukraine. And frankly, I think what we've seen thus far in sanctions is watered down because of some of our allies as well. The United States needs to be more firm, more supportive, more aggressive, more leadership.
And are you confident that the alliance will hold together in its opposition of Russia's attack, even if European nations especially start to feel an economic pinch if Russia holds back energy supplies?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. I was in Munich this weekend at the Munich Security Conference, and while we disagree with allies over some of the steps we should be taking, there was incredible unanimity among allies for our assessment of what Putin is doing, how bad this is, how devastating it is for European security architecture. So I don't doubt that NATO will stick together on the principles. The trick is getting NATO to be stuck together as well when it comes to concrete actions.
What does it mean when President Biden says that U.S. troops are reassuring NATO troops?
Well, you have these countries in Central and Eastern Europe that Putin has placed a target on. Baltic states are a great example. They're right up against Russia's border. They're small countries. They have small militaries. And Putin has basically said in his letter to NATO in December, you need to roll back any deployment of military forces from NATO into these territories of former Soviet or former Warsaw Pact countries. This leaves them feeling quite vulnerable that they are in Putin's crosshairs right after Ukraine. And as a result of that, sending troops in, showing that NATO means its Article 5 collective defense commitment is critical.
What's your expectation of the timeline of, we talked to a young man, an American who's in Ukraine now, who just is fleeing, trying to make it to Poland to stay with some friends. And he said, I don't know if we're going to be gone for just a few days or a few weeks or a few months. Do you get any sense of how long all of this might take?
Well, first off, the Pentagon came out today and gave an estimate of Kiev not being able to stand for 96 hours. And I think it's a terrible message to send. Even if we think that, we should instead be conveying a sense of support and resolve to help the Ukrainians and help them hold off the Russian aggressors as long as possible. It's got to be a message of commitment. In terms of your question, where does this go? Again, it depends on how effective Ukraine's own defense forces are now. They're far better than they were in 2014 and 2015 when Russia invaded the last time. This time, I think they've done a good job on the first night of holding off some of these Russian probes and aggressions and attacks and advances into their territory. I think they may be getting a little bit of confidence out of this even and hope to do it again tonight. We'll see after a few days. One option or one possibility is Russia really does advance quickly. Another is that they start getting blunted when it comes to making gains on the ground. And then this settles into a little bit longer war and a little bit more attrition for Russia, which may be harder for Putin to sustain at home.
Ambassador Volker, we thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.